The whispers that emerge from within are not madness. They are the most intimate language of the human psyche, a complex dialogue that pulses beneath the surface of conscious perception. Your conversations with yourself are not a sign of fragmentation, but a profound attempt to understand the most intricate landscapes of your inner world. Each murmured word, each silent dialogue carried out in the privacy of your own presence, is a delicate thread connecting the visible surface of your existence to the vast, unexplored depths of your unconscious. Imagine the mind as a vast, multilayered theater. The voices you hear are not external actors, but the various fragments of your psychological self engaging in an elaborate performance. The critical voice that judges, the compassionate voice that consoles, the curious voice that questions, these are not separate entities, but different expressions of your most intimate internal negotiations. Talking to yourself is not a disruption of sanity, but the most sophisticated mechanism of self-understanding. Childhood emerges as the primordial composer of this internal symphony. Perhaps there was a moment of profound isolation, a time when external voices failed to provide the understanding you desperately needed. And so, your psyche developed its most intricate survival mechanism. You learned to become your own witness, your own listener, your own source of comfort and confrontation. The voice that speaks within you is a living memory, a complex translation of experiences too profound for simple verbal expression. And if these words awaken something inside you right now, allow yourself to respond with a small gesture of presence, maybe a like or a brief reflection. And if you feel that this journey speaks to something deep within you, subscribe so we can continue exploring these inner landscapes together. The body keeps its own intricate memory of these internal conversations. Your breath changes rhythm, your muscles subtly contract and release with each internal dialogue. The way you talk to yourself is not random, but a carefully choreographed dance of psychological self-regulation. Each whispered word is a mechanism of emotional processing, a way of transforming raw, undigested experience into something that can be understood, metabolized, integrated. Consider the complexity of this internal language. The voice that criticizes is not your enemy, but a part of your psyche attempting to protect you. The voice that consoles is not mere sentimentality, but a sophisticated emotional immune system. When you talk to yourself, you are performing an intricate act of psychological alchemy, transforming pain into understanding, confusion into clarity, fragmentation into a more integrated sense of self. The boundaries between internal and external communication begin to blur. Your conversations with yourself are not separate from your interactions with the world, but a profound preparation for external engagement. Each internal dialogue is a rehearsal, a way of testing psychological boundaries, of preparing the self for the complex negotiations of human interaction. You are not talking to empty air, but engaging with the most intimate landscape of your psychological existence. Silence becomes a living entity. Not the absence of sound, but a profound psychological state where the most complex internal negotiations occur. Your self-talk is a bridge between the visible and the invisible, a way of bringing the unconscious into the realm of potential understanding. Each whispered word is a tentative exploration, a delicate attempt to make sense of the profound mystery of your own existence. The psychological landscape deepens, revealing the intricate tunnels of internal dialogue. Your conversations with yourself are not mere idle chatter, but a sophisticated mechanism of psychological survival. Each whispered word carries the weight of unspoken histories, the subtle vibrations of memories too complex for direct articulation. Imagine your internal dialogue as a living organism, pulsing with the rhythms of unresolved emotional experiences. The voice that emerges is a complex translation device, converting raw psychological pain into a language that can be witnessed, understood, metabolized. Your self-talk becomes a bridge between the conscious and unconscious realms, a delicate membrane through which unexpressed experiences find their way into potential understanding. Childhood emerges as the primordial composer of this internal symphony. Perhaps there were moments of profound emotional isolation, times when the external world failed to provide the nuanced understanding your sensitive psyche craved. And so, you developed the most intricate survival mechanism. You learn to become your own witness, your own interpreter, your own source of compassionate understanding. If you feel these insights stirring something within you, share your voice and support this space with a like. These reflections help others find their way through the same shadows. And if you wish to keep walking with us through these deeper layers of the mind, join us by subscribing. The body speaks its own language of internal dialogue. Your muscles remember the tension of unexpressed emotions. Your breath carries the rhythm of unprocessed experiences. Each time you talk to yourself, you are performing a profound act of psychological archaeology, excavating the buried layers of your most intimate self. The critical voice is not an enemy, but a guardian attempting to protect you from perceived threats. The compassionate voice is not mere sentimentality, but a sophisticated emotional immune system. Consider how your self-talk mirrors the most complex psychological landscapes. Each conversation is a negotiation between different aspects of yourself. The voice that judges, the voice that consoles, the voice that questions. These are not separate entities, but intricate expressions of your psychological complexity. You are not fragmenting, but performing the most delicate act of internal integration. The walls of your psychological space become alive with these conversations. Windows of perception open and close, doors between different states of consciousness shift and transform. Your self-talk is not a disruption of sanity, but the most sophisticated mechanism of emotional processing. Each whispered word is a tentative exploration, a delicate attempt to bring light to the hidden corners of your psychological landscape. Repression finds its most eloquent expression in the art of internal dialogue. The voices you hear are not random, but carefully constructed defense mechanisms. Each conversation is a complex dance of protection and exploration, a way of maintaining psychological balance while simultaneously pushing against the boundaries of your understood self. You are not avoiding external reality, but preparing for a more profound engagement with the complexity of human experience. The mind becomes a living theater where the most intimate psychological dramas unfold. Your self-talk is the script, the performance, and the audience all at once. Each whispered word is a thread in the complex tapestry of your psychological existence, weaving together fragments of experience, memory, desire, and potential understanding. Darkness descends. Not the darkness of night, but the profound darkness of the unconscious mind. Here, in the most intimate chambers of psychological experience, the true landscape of your internal dialogue emerges with savage intensity. Every protective layer begins to dissolve, revealing the raw, pulsating core of your most hidden self. The internal voices grow more intense, more visceral. They are no longer whispers but primal screams, ancient echoes of unprocessed traumas, unexpressed desires. Your self-talk transforms from a subtle mechanism of understanding to a violent confrontation with the most deeply buried aspects of your psychological terrain. Each word becomes a weapon, each sentence a battlefield where the most intimate wars of the self are fought. Imagine the invisible wounds that live within your conversations. The critical voice is not a separate entity, but a fractured part of your childhood self desperately trying to maintain control. The compassionate voice is not mere kindness, but a profound act of psychological survival, a delicate attempt to heal the most profound emotional injuries. Your internal dialogue becomes a living archive of pain, a complex translation of experiences too profound for simple verbal expression. The body becomes the stage where these psychological dramas unfold. Muscles tense with unspoken tensions, breath becomes shallow, carrying the weight of unexpressed emotions. Your self-talk is no longer a gentle exploration, but a savage confrontation with the most deeply buried aspects of your psychological landscape. Each whispered word carries the potential for either destruction or profound transformation. Trauma lives in the body long after the mind has forgotten. It vibrates in the rhythm of your internal conversations, in the precise cadence of your self-talk, in the way you negotiate between different aspects of your psychological self. The boundaries between past and present begin to dissolve. Your internal dialogue reveals itself as a multidimensional space where time becomes fluid, where childhood wounds continue to breathe and transform. The shadows of unprocessed experiences grow deeper. Each internal conversation becomes a portal to unexplored psychological landscapes. The voices within you are not separate entities, but fragments of a fractured self attempting to find their way back to wholeness. Your self-talk is a complex language of survival, a sophisticated mechanism of psychological protection and potential healing. Silence becomes a living entity. Not the absence of sound, but a profound psychological state where the most violent emotional storms rage without a single audible tremor. Your internal dialogue is not a gentle exploration, but a savage attempt to bring light to the most deeply buried aspects of your psychological existence. Each whispered word is a knife cutting through layers of psychological defense, revealing the raw, pulsating core of your most intimate self. The mind becomes a battlefield where the most profound psychological wars are fought in absolute, devastating quiet. Your self-talk is no longer a mechanism of understanding, but a primal scream of survival, a desperate attempt to integrate the most fractured aspects of your psychological landscape. Transformation emerges from the depths of the most profound darkness. The internal dialogue that once felt like a battlefield begins to reveal its most profound secret. Healing is not about silencing the voices, but about creating a compassionate space where all aspects of the self can be heard, witnessed, understood. The fractured voices start to breathe differently. What once seemed like a chaotic internal war now reveals itself as a sophisticated mechanism of psychological integration. Each voice, the critical, the compassionate, the curious, the wounded, begins to find its place in a more harmonious internal landscape. Your self-talk transforms from a mechanism of survival to a profound act of self-love, a delicate bridge between fragmentation and wholeness. Your relationship with your internal dialogue undergoes a radical metamorphosis. No longer a defensive structure, it becomes a living, breathing manifestation of your most intimate self-understanding. The boundaries between different aspects of your psyche begin to soften. You are not fighting against yourself, but creating a profound internal dialogue of healing, of compassionate witnessing. If you feel that this story helped you see your own inner landscape more clearly, offer a like and share your thoughts. And if you want this space to remain part of your journey ahead, subscribe. Together we continue the path of understanding, healing, and awakening. The child within you begins to heal. Not through aggressive confrontation, but through a gentle, almost imperceptible integration. The voices that once seemed to tear you apart now become different languages of the same profound self. Your internal dialogue becomes a sacred space of transformation, where the most wounded aspects of your psychological self can find understanding, can breathe, can slowly begin to reconcile. Healing is not about erasing the internal voices, but about creating space for them to exist in a more harmonious way. Your self-talk was never a sign of weakness, but a profound intuitive wisdom. You have been protecting the most vulnerable parts of yourself, creating an internal holding environment where fractured aspects of your psyche could slowly, carefully begin to communicate, to understand, to integrate. The psychological defenses that once seemed like barriers now reveal themselves as intricate bridges of self-understanding. Your internal dialogue was never a sign of madness, but a sophisticated mechanism of psychological survival. Each whispered conversation, each internal negotiation was a love letter to your wounded self, a complex attempt to bring light to the most hidden corners of your psychological landscape. The mind is not a fixed entity, but a living, breathing landscape of continuous transformation. Your self-talk was never about fragmentation, but about the most profound act of self-love. You have been creating a sacred internal space where the most delicate parts of your psychological self could exist, could breathe, could slowly begin to heal. In this moment of awakening, you understand that internal dialogue is not a problem to be solved, but a profound journey of self-discovery. You are not defined by the voices within you, but by your capacity for profound, compassionate understanding. Your internal conversations are not a sign of weakness, but the most sophisticated language of psychological healing. If something in these words stirred a truth inside you, don't ignore it. Follow the channel and continue this inner journey with me. You were never meant to walk it alone.